Now it is my pleasure to introduce someone who spoke to my group and had a great impact, Colonel Robert Garland. Robert Shark Garland is a distinguished combat veteran and former F-15 Eagle instructor at the Air Force Weapons School, often referred to as the Air Force's Top Gun program. He was one of the first test pilots for the groundbreaking F-22 Raptor, and his experience and expertise had a significant impact at the Fighter Weapons School. He's retired recently as a full colonel, but the Air Force has lost his our gain. He is now a 2023 Vistage top performing speaker with over 70 Vistage presentations to his credit. He also has a patent in aviation design, and he now inspires leaders across the country to reach new heights as an instructor at the VMAX group, where he teaches leadership and teamwork excellence. And you're going to be getting some of that today. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Robert Shark Garland. Robert, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Awesome, Alan. Thank you so much. Let me take the screen and I will put up this presentation and away we go. All right. How does that look to everybody? Okay. Good morning. So grateful for the opportunity to be with you. Want to also, as we get started this morning, be thinking of our friends and family and our community that's over on the East Coast with Hurricane Helene that has come on shore last night. So a lot of folks being challenged right now, and let's be thinking of them and able to help as appropriate. If you're watching this after the fact through the recording, just know that we're thinking of you and we're here to help as we all recover from that challenging weather event. So Alan, thank you so much. Thank you to the Vistage team for the opportunity to be here. Our discussion today is centered on mastering accountability. And so I want to share a secret with you how we in the American fighter pilot community effectively do that. Why we are high-performing teams, why we're high-performing teams, what we specifically do, and then I want to share some details with you on exactly how we do that. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to join you. This session is how we harness high-performing team principles in order to be our very best, and some specific details associated with that. Now, I will tell you up front that this is a personal thing. It's a personal thing for me, and I offer for you as well. And it goes from being personal then to professional also. So I'll ask you 3 questions, and I'd love for you to, if you have a notepad, jot down 3 answers to these topics as we go through our time together this morning. The first one is, why are you here and why is it important? What's your purpose? What's your purpose in life, personally? And then professionally at work, what's your purpose at work? So why are you here and why is it important? And I'll share my perspective on that as we go. The second thing we're going to talk about is this concept, this principle of accountability, how we effectively master it. And the third principle is going to be the technique that we use, specifically proven effective over centuries now, and most recently at the Air Force Weapons School over the last 75 years, the concept of a debrief and what that debrief actually really looks like, and ultimately why it's important. So those 3 things, beginning first with our why. Why are you here? Why is it important? What is your purpose? As we dig into that, I do want to share you, because we're talking about business, that over the last several years, we've all been going through challenging times. And I'll tell you for confidence that I'm blessed to travel the entire country. And we've all gone through these experiences in a similar way. So we're all experiencing the same type things. But we love to, at VMAX, we love to study Gallup as a research organization. And over the last several years, they've really captured quite a bit of information, specifically us as leaders, talking about our folks, our team members, our employees, folks that work with us and for us. And when asked about, is there appropriate employee engagement at work, the answer was not good. And when they ask, are you thriving at work? 23% of our folks actually said that, yes, I'm thriving. What does that mean? That means that over 3/4 of our team members are just trying to survive. So how do we survive? How do we go from surviving into an area of thriving and soaring? How do we effectively do that? Y'all may have seen some of this. There's a tremendous amount of quiet quitting. It's been going on for several years, and the numbers continue to rise. And then you may have seen this concept of loud quitting, where our team members have ultimately had a belly full, and now they're a wrecking ball and they're breaking glass as they go out. Being aware of those things as a leader helps us focus just a little bit on techniques and principles of the best way in order to work with our people. But please, please, we all have to understand that this is a challenging time to be a leader, and it has been for a while. But I offer to you that the very best thing that we can do is have it start with us. Start at the leadership level. Start at the very top. And we lead it. So if we're saying that it is a difficult time to lead, that's absolutely true. And we can all recognize some of these challenges. Most recently, last spring, John Clifton, who's the CEO of Gallup, because they've gathered so much information, he finally had to collect it and publish a book, Blind Spot, and specifically talks about a rise in unhappiness. Specifically, we're talking about our country, but it's global. Over 51% of us are unhappy in life. Well, if I'm unhappy in life, at home, personally, what happens when I come to work? So there is a reason why we talk about these things. We as leaders are thinking about them, because when my people come to work in the morning, they don't leave themselves outside in the car or the truck. They bring their personal self into work. And ultimately, our job as leaders is to help them be the very best version of themselves that they can be. Why? Because we need them to perform. We want them to perform, and we want them to be successful, because that leads to our success collectively as a team. And so here's some principles maybe to take a quick note on. These are successful, proven principles of high-performing teams. It starts first with our purpose, which was why we started our discussion with that. Once we understand our personal purpose and the common purpose of the team, we collect those together, and it's time to soar. We can then assign some goals, and we hold ourselves personally and then mutually accountable for the behavior and the outcomes that we achieve. And I love this one. Number 2, I offer to y'all that we are in fact a collection of individuals. We're a team of individuals. And so my boy Weston, I want to introduce you to him. I'm so proud of him. This picture was 2 years ago when he was varsity football at our small town here in Central Texas outside of Dripping Springs. I will tell you, he's a huge young man, 6'3", 250 pounds, and he's been with me in some seminars. And I always say, you know, in his junior and senior year of high school, he grew into his body. And he's like, Dad, I didn't just grow into my body, I worked into it 6 days a week in the gym with my friends. And that's absolutely true. Not only did he have the potential to be a very talented athlete, but he worked incredibly hard at it, motivated and very focused. And so he would come home in Texas during summer camp. Of course, it's 1,000 degrees with 1,000% humidity. So the team is on the field at first thing in the morning, and then they're in the weight room in the afternoon when it's really hot. And so the first week into summer camp, Weston would come home, and I'm asking him, hey, Weston, what is the coach and the leadership team talking about in terms of I in team, individuals on the team? I go, Weston, is there an I in team? And he's like, oh, no, Dad, no. No. Coach says there's no I in team. And I go, really? I go, so what position do you play? He goes, Dad, I'm an outside linebacker. I go, okay, that makes sense. I go, Weston, in the morning, I want you to go straight to the coach and say you're going to be the starting quarterback. And he's like, no, Dad, I can't do that. Austin is our starting quarterback. And I said, why? And he goes, well, he's very experienced. He's incredibly talented, throws the ball the length of the field, and he's already a Division I recruit. And that's true. He went off to play Division I football. And so I go, you're not going to be the quarterback? No, Austin is our quarterback. Okay, how about being a wide receiver? And after he goes, Dad, look at me. I go, okay, good. I get it. But Why don't you be a wide receiver? And he's like, Dad, Garland is our wide receiver. I go, why? Because he runs a 4.4 40. He catches everything that Austin throws. And he's also a D1 recruit. He's playing at the next level. And I go, so you're not going to be the quarterback or a wide receiver. You are a tight end and a outside linebacker. And he goes, yes, sir. I go, when you go into the weight room in the afternoon, do you train like you're a quarterback? And he goes, no, I train like I'm a linebacker. And I go, that's awesome. So if I think about it, in fact, the coach has been wise enough to look at each of you individuals and look at your experience, gift, talents, and skills and put you in the very best position on the team in order for you to perform and soar. And then when he collects all of y'all together, then the team wins. And he's like, Dad, yeah, I guess you're right. But there is an I in win, and they almost made it to state 2 years ago. I'm very proud of him. I think there is, in fact, an I in team. We're a collection of individuals. Now, why did I take an extra moment, y'all, to highlight that? Because as a leader, as a military commander, as a CEO, responsible for our people and then bringing them together to succeed, if I am able to focus at a personal level and understand how I can best help someone grow and perform, I have the best opportunity to have a successful team. The third principle is that we know what we do. We know what we do, our job or our mission. And this is a wonderful note to write down if you're taking notes. You can never over communicate. And the beautiful word is expectation. Tell me what you expect of me. Tell me what the job is. And then please, please, please tell me what you expect me to do in detail if you can do that. Because now I know, especially if you're measuring me to your expectation as a leader, now I know the bar that we've set because it's measurable. Communicate the expectation. High-performing teams practice, or they do their job over and over and over until it becomes instinctual. And then the fourth and final pillar is that we always come back together and we perform a debrief. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's dive into this principle of accountability. Some think it's a positive concept. Some think that it's a negative concept. Take a look at this picture. Picture paints 1,000 words, right? Isn't that how you say it? Take a moment in the chat to tell me what you see. Tell me what you see. There's 5 individuals here in a meeting. What do you see? What strikes you from this picture? And I'll share with you that this is an example of accountability. And we can probably all agree that this is a negative experience for almost everyone in this meeting. There's an authority figure or a leader that's pointing a finger, that's assigning blame, that has aggressive body language. There are 3 other individuals that believe that they have not performed to a level of expectation. And then there's 1 individual that's supporting the authority figure. And I would probably think that the 3 people that have their heads down are walking out of this meeting, can't wait for it to end, and walking out of this meeting ready to update a resume. Maybe not the most positive environment in order to work in. Yet that is what society tends to think is the definition of accountability as a negative term. Let's shift our thinking. Let's shift the way that we view accountability. And this is the secret of high-performing teams. We, in fact, think that it is a leadership function that drives the engagement of accountability. And I will also share with you, because we are business leaders, that without a doubt, this is a competitive advantage. This is an opportunity to engage with our people, to gather lessons learned, whether we did great at a job or whether we failed miserably. It's neutral, it's balanced. We're going to learn equally the same, and we're going to tell everybody so that we can either repeat that or we can make corrections to mistakes that we've made. And so why is that important? Because this is where high-performing teams go to ultimately learn. In fact, the concept of accountability is a positive thing. And here's the definition. It is just simply as clear as taking absolute ownership for the outcomes that we achieve. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I need to do it. And so I am taking ownership. I'm responsible for my words, my behavior, the results of my performance. It is not diminished or qualified in any way. This is just a fact. These are facts. And because this is a human endeavor, y'all, we all know it. We all know. And we can see it, right? We use a phrase in Central Texas, you can't fool the kids and the dog. Everybody knows because it's a human perspective. When we do this correctly, commitment becomes codified. I'm with you. This makes sense. I want to come alongside and participate as well, especially with what we're doing is a just cause. When this aligns with my moral compass and we're collectively doing this for the right reason, I'm with you as well. And that ultimately cements trust, building 1,000 bridges. And so as business leaders, as a military commander, I do have a motivation because I fly a single-seat fighter jet. I cannot win the battle all by myself. One airplane, one pilot. I have a team. I have a really large team. And so ultimately, I have to delegate some responsibility and some work to a team member. And then I have to effectively train them, and then I have to let them go. I have to enable them to go out and do that job, meet those expectations for us as a team. And so by effectively leading a team from an accountability, a positive accountability perspective, individual performance soars and the team then thrives in any type of disruption. So accountability is in fact our superpower, y'all. It's a positive thing, but it is an art form. We have to have kid gloves sometimes. We have to understand our team members. We have to understand where they're coming from. We have to understand what they brought to work this morning to the best of our ability. We need to go through life with them as best we can. And so here's a couple of interesting things to think about. A technique is this technique called private accountability. Private accountability is where, Alan, as an example, you're my boss, and I'm not performing well at all. And the whole team knows it. And instead of having a team discussion where we're all collectively there together, you pull me aside into your office and we have a private discussion. Now, everybody else on the team knows that you're probably going to work to correct my behavior and or move me somewhere different. But what happens when we come out of that meeting and we're laughing and high-fiving, and then I walk back to my cubicle? What does the team ultimately think? They have no idea what happened in our meeting. They know that there should have been some accountability to my behavior, but they don't know. And so that's when then all of our minds race and we don't effectively come to a common consensus. Performance is a team issue. We learn together when we debrief together, when we hold ourselves accountable together. It is a team concept, not just a private endeavor. When we're looking for how we did on a particular job, the normal trend is, okay, I made a mistake. We did not achieve mission success. We failed at a contract. The customer called us and they're not happy. Well, let's go back and sit down and look at what went well and what didn't go well. And I offer to you that we call it insufficient. It is clearly not enough because it omits the human aspect of it. And so those are the wrong questions to ask. We don't just want to ask, well, what went well and what didn't? We want to know first and foremost, did we meet our mission objective, our job's objective, our expectation? Did we do that? And that's a yes or no answer. And once we know that answer, now we can start digging into facts. And we can understand specifically what happened, engaging collectively with us as a team. Just using a concept of accountability, especially when we ignore it or try to avoid it, we all know that the problem does not go away. It's still there. So if I, as a boss, am concerned that if I talk to one of my folks that's performing poorly or behaving badly, and I don't want to talk to them, especially in front of the team, and I really don't want to, bother them because they may leave, the entire team knows that I'm not serious about ultimate team performance. And so just to ignore it does not make it go away. And this is an example of weak leadership, which is why I said that at the beginning that effective, high-performing teams always start with an effective, high-performing leader that holds himself or herself accountable for their own outcomes and then the collective team as a whole. Let's talk quickly about another leadership challenge. It's this concept of victim mentality. And it is pervasive, and you're probably seeing it. But make a note of this, maybe on your paper or definitely in the chat. Tell me what you think this concept of victim mentality. It's not my fault, it's your fault. I'm not to blame, you didn't give me enough information. What does that cost you? What do you think it's costing you right now? Because you can probably think of one or several people. If we allow that to fester, what happens? Ultimately, what can that cost us? This concept of leadership, it is not just looking at what we do, it's looking at why we do it, and the leader leads from the top, from the front. Therein ultimately is our secret sauce. Real leaders set your organizations apart from all competition. Real leaders hold themselves accountable and the team collectively accountable for the outcomes that we achieve. And what does that ultimately bring together? We call it the life cycle. Our Top Gun teamwork course is built on this. You can see how everything then becomes a balance. When things are out of balance, there's a deficiency in leadership, i.e., I am not helping you be the very best that you can be, personally, the very best professional that you can be, and then I'm not leading the team effectively, holding us accountable for our performance. So today, through our webinar, just think about this. Let's update the way that we lead our teams. And let's start simply by ritualizing this concept of positive accountability, because it is a superpower and it will separate you from competition. Accountability. Interesting concept. I will also tell you that it comes from a place, because this is the human condition, it comes from a place of humility and vulnerability. And I love to talk about Dr. Amy Edmondson. The Fearless Organization is her book, and it's an exceptional read. And specifically, she defines vulnerability as the willingness to admit your humanity. So if I were to stand in front of you today and say, I'm Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way, you know that's not true, because I'm a person and I'm fallible, and we all collectively are. But true vulnerability is the willingness to admit your vulnerability. And Dr. Tim Clark, in his book, and I want to share it with you, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, and this is an amazing read. He specifically says that true accountability is rewarded vulnerability. You're actually rewarding that. It's an encouragement. It is a positive thing. And so these are different techniques that we can use, especially as leaders, to drive this engagement. And so Gallup said that only about 25 or 23% of our folks believe that they're thriving because there's not appropriate engagement at a leadership level or a team level. Well, I think this technique offers us the ability to be able to change that. And without question, it's a 100% advantage that we have. And this is where we ultimately get to go to learn in a positive, nurturing, vulnerable, humble way. So when we do this correctly, it actually is our superpower. It's a ritual. And so it creates this process. This is our life cycle. We understand the expectations of the job that we're supposed to do. By the way, we know that we're going to be doing a debrief at the end of our job. we're going to come back together and we're going to talk about, did we achieve our objective? So we know that going in, which helps us plan even better. Once we have a plan, we communicate that to our team, and then we go out and perform, and then we always, always, always come back in and debrief. I want to share this picture with you. It's a personal thing for me. It has nothing to do with the name on the side of the airplane or even the pilot sitting there. It has everything to do with that piece of fabric that's on my shoulder, the patch of the Air Force Weapons School. That school has been in place for 75 years, and from day one, the entire objective has been, how can we build one more brick for tomorrow? How can we constantly and continuously be learning? And it's irrelevant whether we had a great day or a terrible day, it's equally the same. What can we learn? This was my final flight in the Air Force. And people ask me, do you miss flying? Yeah, I mean, I do. But I tell you what I miss most is that environment and being with those people. Dr. Clark talks about it as a psychologically safe environment. It is a powerful place to be, a powerful work culture. And y'all, I would work there forever if they would let me. So with that said, then, research has shown, and ironically, this research came out right when I took the picture that I just showed you in 2013. Two researchers ultimately fell into this idea of, why don't we see if teams debrief? And they found out that, in fact, organizations that take the time to effectively debrief see a 20 to 25% performance boost. Y'all, I would offer that it's much more than that. Because it doesn't just affect your bottom line, it affects your people in a positive and nurturing, uplifting way. What would that 20 to 25% performance boost look like to y'all? Interesting thought. At VMAX Group, we've come up with this concept of ultimately a framework that leads to high performance. It's a flight path. It starts with, first, our purpose, understanding why we're here and why it's important. And then we specifically go into the mission that we're supposed to do and the standards that we expect to achieve, a standard of success, a standard of excellence. We include Dr. Clark's conversation of psychological safety, a powerful environment with which to learn. We plan at a tactical level, and we communicate that to our teams, which means this is how we're going to do what we do. Does everyone understand? And then we hold ourselves and our teams collectively accountable every single time, because the objective is for the team to constantly be improving and learning. And so an effective team has to have team accountability, and it's one of the things that we as a group see everywhere we go. In fact, one of the questions that I'll ask in our Vistage seminars is, does everybody recognize the concept of team accountability in their organizations? And it's amazing how few hands ultimately go up in our small meeting rooms, because it is a challenge that we all face. And so I want to share with you then the third principle that I mentioned at the beginning. Here's what we do. We use the concept of a debrief in order to ritualize or culturalize accountability. This is where we ultimately get to go to learn as a team. It's called the debriefed focus approach, which means I know I'm going to be debriefing at the end of the performance. And what's amazing is that encourages me, just as a human being, it's just a natural instinct. It encourages me to go get my team members and get help, to get folks coming alongside, to ask good questions, to be as prepared as possible. So the planning process, it actually helps set the conditions for the concept of accountability. Why? Because we know that at the end of our performance, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about equally if we did great or we completely miserably failed. It's the exact same discussion, because the objective is to constantly be learning and to constantly be paying our lessons learned forward. And so here is the specific format for how you accomplish an effective debrief. Now, these words are chosen on purpose. And here's the underlying theme, the foundation of an effective debrief. Y'all, it is a positive, forward-focused, uplifting, nurturing experience for the whole team. So if I were to show that picture with the young lady pointing again, it's the exact opposite of that. This is a positive, nurturing, uplifting experience that we want all of our folks to want to come and participate in. Because not only will they be recognized for great performance, but even if we messed up, we failed, we're going to be recognized for the hard work that we put in and how we can learn from that collectively as a team to get better. So if I'm just constantly making mistakes in a debrief, I get to learn how to solve those mistakes and do better tomorrow, constantly growing. Every day is a new brick. And so an effective foundational debrief for learning is a constructive evaluation. It's constructive. It's all there to build up. But because we are in business, let's evaluate how we're doing. So let's evaluate that. The other interesting piece is that I don't just jump in to a solution. It's kind of like when I fly off the handle or we see road rage out on the highways, we're just reacting emotionally. Because we are emotional people, it's a human tendency. Let's think first about what I'm thinking. The decision that I have made or am making that results in the action that I took or the action that I'm taking. So I actually, as a leader or as a debrief moderator, I actually take a moment of pause, breathe through my nose like a marathon runner, and go, okay, I want to ask a good why question. Why did you do that? But it's not finger pointing or blaming. It's in a positive way. We're inquisitive. We want to know. Well, why were you thinking that? What were you thinking that ultimately led to that action that you took? Because what's amazing is that sometimes people will not effectively hear the expectation that I communicated, i.e. exactly what I wanted them to do. They didn't actually hear it in the way I thought I said it. And so they made a decision based on their assumption and the resulting action. So by understanding what people are thinking that led to the action, we can now very simply evaluate the quality of both the decision and the action, as it always relates to the objectives that we set out to achieve. Always, always measuring, did we accomplish our objective and expectation as it relates to the task? And back to Dr. Amy Edmondson, she highlights this VUCA environment that we all work in and live in. It's also an Army War College doctrine. It's been out for 10 years now. This concept of a VUCA environment, y'all, and see if you recognize this. Both in your personal and your professional life, we live in a volatile environment. It's uncertain. It's definitely complex, and it is ambiguous. Sometimes I can't always put my thumb on the exact right answer to choose. We work in a VUCA environment. And the secret sauce for the fighter pilot community is that we recognize that, and this is our debrief technique in order to constantly be learning. And it's the same environment that you work in. So I offer that this technique will work for you absolutely the same as it works for us. And so I want to close with this final story. So this is a personal endeavor. As you heard Alan say, I was very fortunate to be chosen as a mid-career professional as one of the first 8 pilots to start flying the brand new F-22 Raptor. We were flying and testing these new airplanes at our Air Force base out in Las Vegas, Nevada. And what's interesting is we were chosen by the 4-star General Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And we're in a meeting, and he comes into the meeting, and we're all 8 pilots sitting there. And I happen to be sitting at the end of the table, and he goes, "You 8 pilots are responsible for bringing this new airplane into the entire Air Force inventory for the next 50 years. No pressure." And then because I was sitting at the end of the table, and he goes, "Shark, you are my project lead." And you're like, oh, no. And what that means is that you're going to call me on the phone every Friday afternoon, and you're going to let me know how we're doing. Because I'm reporting to the Pentagon and I'm reporting to Congress. So I look forward to your phone call. Have y'all ever heard of the concept that life changes in the blink of an eye? And so I've learned subsequently that it takes us less than 1/1000th of a second in order to blink our eye. 1/1000th of a second is the difference between me standing here sharing this story with you on this webinar and being buried at a national cemetery dead. 1/1000th of a second. It was 5 days before Christmas on December 20th of 2004. I'm sitting in a brand new F-22 fighter jet, Raptor 14. I'm lined up on the end of the runway at our fighter base in Las Vegas, looking north, ready to take off. I'd been flying the F-15C fighter jet for about 14 and a half years, and we've been flying the new F-22 jet for about a year. We're learning how to fly it. Our job is to test it. And so as I looked at all the displays, everything is in the green. The tower calls and says, Raptor 1, you're clear for takeoff. I advance the throttles forward as the engines come to life. I release the brakes and the airplane starts to accelerate. Now, it's a rocket ship. If you've ever seen it at an air show, 50 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour, happens less than 7 seconds. At 150 miles an hour, I pull back on the flight control stick to bring the nose up in the air, safely climb away from the ground, look out the window, close the shade, lean the seat back, and go to sleep, right? That's what we do when we fly. But 5 days before Christmas in 2004, on a beautiful blue sky afternoon at 3:30, with me being the last flight before we stood down for the holiday season, Raptor 14 just jumps up in the air. It just leaps up off the ground. And you're looking around going, well, that's not normal. But I'm a fighter pilot, right? I'm supposed to be able to fly anything. That's what the movies tell us. And so I think I'm flying the airplane as best I can, and it starts to swerve to the right, and then it swerves to the left. And then, y'all, it pitches up, and it's pointing straight up to the sky, and you look at it, nothing but blue sky. I'm 50 feet in the air doing 175 miles an hour, and that's not good. Full afterburner to try to keep the airplane flying. As soon as the afterburner's light, the nose points straight down to the ground, and I'm looking at nothing but concrete at 75 feet in the air, approaching 200 miles an hour in full afterburner. None of this is good. So as I rip the throttles back to try to take afterburner out, the nose comes back up toward the horizon, and I'm looking down the runway again, down the horizon. The airplane kind of settles just a little bit. And so for us, as with you, we immediately go to a checklist, a process. So I'm going to the checklist. The first thing is fly the airplane. That's a good idea. Safely fly the airplane. So I think I'm doing that to the best of my ability. Second step is safely fly away from the ground so that you can figure out what the problem is so you can come back and land. Well, in order to safely fly away from the ground, I have to raise the tires. I have to raise the landing gear, because if I go too fast, then the wind tears the tires off, makes it hard to land, right? And then try to come back in and land. So I have to raise the landing gear handle over here with my left hand in order to bring the tires up. And so I'm just going to share with you what happened. You can decide for yourself. Is it a miracle? Is it just an experience? I just want to tell you what happened. I raised the landing gear handle, and as soon as I did, Raptor 14 flipped upside down, inverted. It flipped end over end, landed in the middle of the runway, and blew up. The first F-22 crash in history. So I'm standing here, right? So what happens? The engineers told me that the airplane rolled completely upside down in 1.5 seconds. It takes the ejection seat 1.25 seconds to get out of the airplane. Starting to see where the blink of an eye is? So as I raise the landing gear handle, I start to feel the airplane roll. My left hand goes from the gear handle to the ejection ring, which is right here in the middle of the seat. Slam my head back, pray for all I'm worth, pull as hard as I can. But it takes an entire 1.25 seconds for that process to ultimately work. And so at 1/4 second, the canopy blows off. So you don't hit it like Goose did in Top Gun 1. That's bad. And when the canopy leaves, then the seat is supposed to go up and out of the airplane, but that takes another full 1/2 second. So at 3/4 second, the seat explodes and sends you up and out of the airplane. It looks something like this. That's not me. I found this picture on the internet. Nobody saw me. There are no pictures. There's no video. But it is a very violent experience to eject from a modern fighter jet, thankfully. As I come out of the airplane, I recognize, right, that I'm not dead yet, but then you have 210 miles an hour of wind because I came out of the airplane at 100 feet in the air going 210 miles an hour in a right bank where I come out down toward the ground at 100 feet. but I'm still alive. And I'm aware of all this. Temporal distortion is amazing. Your mind slows down and you're following the process. So I'm not dead yet. I'm still sitting in this seat. The next thing is you have to get kicked out of the seat because the parachute is not on your back. It's in the seat. So you have to get kicked out of the seat. I get kicked out of the seat. And now I'm Superman flying through the air with the greatest of ease. The very first thing you would care about if you went from flying an airplane to skydiving is a parachute. Y'all, I look up and there is no parachute. And I don't feel any tug on my harness. No opening shock. There's nothing there. One more look, nothing. Forget the rest of the checklist. Look at the ground. That's how long you have for the rest of your life. So all I can do is get in this tight ball and just be ready for it to be over. Now, if I was lost, I'd be in a better place, but it would be sad for my family, I think. So I get in this tight ball, y'all, and I can't describe it any other way. As if you have a child, a young child that's asleep on the sofa or on the floor. You know how we put them in the bed? We lay them in the bed and then we slide our hands out from underneath them so we don't wake them up. Y'all, that's exactly how I was laid in the dirt right beside the runway on December 20th of 2004. I was just laid on the ground. I didn't hit the ground, I didn't roll and tumble, and I did not scratch my watch. Same one. And I'm just laying there. But you're kind of waiting right now for the inevitable, the sting to come, but nothing happens. So I stand up and I look and everything's still connected. I dust myself off and I look behind me and there's a parachute laying in a straight line back here. It's in a streamer. The cord is 75 feet and the canopy is 25 feet for a total of 100 feet. And I came out at 100 feet going down toward the ground. The parachute never opened. So I stand up, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm watching this fireball go up, and I go, this is a really bad day. I have to call the general. But then you go, well, it's not a bad day at all. It's a great day. And I bet it's going to be a good story. So let me share the end of the story with you. We did not fly anymore because we were down for the holidays. It was going to be 2.5 weeks before we flew again. If you've ever heard that concept, you get bucked off a horse, you got to get back on. Absolutely true. I did not have that opportunity for over 2 weeks. Now, the first week, it hurts physically. You're recovering from that. But the real challenge is the spiritual, mental, and emotional challenge. That's the real challenge. And so I got to do 2 specific meetings during that 2-week period. One was with our life support professionals. They come in, they think I'm a ghost. There's no way I could have survived that. You can feel the tension in the room. And I just told them, you know what? I love y'all. You're doing an amazing thing. I'm here because of the work that you do. Please keep doing this. Pay attention to those details because you're going to help the next pilot survive as well. Thank you. Not a dry eye in the room, right? The next meeting, though, is a little bit more difficult because when you're the first pilot and you're the only pilot of that kind of experience, the spotlight's pretty hot. But we're accountable. We take responsibility. And so as I'm driving home from that, the team lead, supported by the 4-star general, calls me on the phone and he says, hey, Sharp, thank you for coming in, taking time off the holiday to come and meet with us. Want to tell you, we found out what happened. It's not your fault. And so the general wants you back in the airplane as soon as we start flying right after the new year. Have a great rest of the holiday. And I'm sitting there on the phone going, absolutely not. I'll never do this again. You can take this job, whatever. And I think I ultimately said, thank you. I look forward to the opportunity. And so for the next week, working toward being ready mentally, spiritually, emotionally to get back in that airplane. Thursday, right after the new year, I'm back in another brand new F-22. We're a 2-ship. We're going to go fly. I will tell you humbly and vulnerably that as we got to the runway on that Thursday afternoon, all my prayers were answered because it broke. The airplane broke. Not my fault. I taxied right back to the maintenance professionals. I jump in my truck and I drive home. I walk in, Amy's like, you're home early. I'm like, yeah. The next day, Friday afternoon, I'm back in another brand new F-22 Raptor. We're taking the runway. And this time it breaks as we are out on the runway. All my prayers answered. All of this was normal because our job was to test these brand new airplanes, to figure out how we can make them perfect if we can, so that when we ultimately send them out to the Air Force, they work awesome. All my prayers were answered that Friday afternoon. I taxied it back to the maintenance professionals and I ran home. I walk in, Amy's like, "You're home early." Yeah. Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, I got to sleep on that experience. I do not wish that on anyone. Monday afternoon, 3 weeks to the day, as I walk out of the house, Amy gives me a big hug and she goes, "Today will be a great day." Much wiser than I. And so as I get out to the base, ultimately go through the briefing, get out to the airplane, start taxiing the airplane to the end of the runway, I'm exhausted with prayers. Please, please, please brake. Nothing's happening. It's perfect. I get to the end of the runway and I call the tower and I say, "Raptor 1 is ready for takeoff." And they go, "Raptor 1, taxi onto the runway and wait." And you're like, "Wait, I don't want to wait anymore." As I taxi onto the runway, y'all, I look down the runway and there's Mount Everest sitting in front of me. It is a mountain that I cannot climb over. And I humbly tell you, I had zero desire to do it. As I sat there, my hands are shaking. I cannot breathe. I'm frozen in the seat. What I learned from that meeting a week earlier is that we put a test pilot in a simulator programmed with exactly what happened to me 3 weeks earlier. And the first 8 times, he didn't survive. And he knew what was going to happen. It took 9 times. That's a pretty big risk to take again. Our daughter, Amy and I's daughter, was 4 years old, and our boy was 4 weeks old on that day. My purpose in life, to be a man of faith. I'm supposed to be a husband to Amy and a father to Haley and Weston. That's my purpose in life. But my calling, from experience, gift, talents, and skills, with opportunity, is to be an American fighter pilot. And so, y'all, I grabbed that lap belt and I pulled a giant tug on it as hard as I could. And I heard the tower say, "Raptor 1, you're clear for takeoff." I looked at all the displays. Everything is in the green again. This time I advanced the power forward and the airplane comes to life and I release the brakes. I let them go. And the airplane starts to accelerate 50 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour. I pull back on the stick, the nose comes up, and this time that brand new airplane just floated up in the air. And you're like, "That's better." But now you have to raise this landing gear handle. And the last time that I did that, I lived by 1/1000th of a second. I raise the landing gear handle and I feel the tires come up and the doors close, clunk, clunk. And y'all, I'm here to tell you that I got to the end of that runway and I pulled as hard as I could on that stick. If you've ever been to an air show and seen that fighter jet go straight up, it pins you in the seat. And I couldn't stand it, y'all. I had to look over my shoulder to see what happened to Mount Everest. And it had faded into mist. It was gone. And you're like, "You know what? I'm soaring into the rest of life." And so our team ultimately put this book together. Alan showed it to you, Building Resilience. I write about that experience here, as well as my teammates who have had equally amazing experiences. And ultimately what we share are tools and tips and techniques to help us recover from that, because on that afternoon, I did not build resilience sitting on that seat. It was weeks, months, years, decades before that ultimately made me release the brakes. Understanding your purpose and then understanding your calling. So grateful for the opportunity to be with you, to talk about how we master accountability. Y'all, it is a secret sauce. But because this is a human endeavor, collectively with all of us, it's something that we can all lean into in order to not just survive, but to thrive and soar in life and in business. So Alan, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Miss Madeline, to the team for having me. Grateful to everyone in the Vistage community for letting me share these thoughts. God bless y'all. Thank you so much. Alan, over to you.
Earl, thank you very much. It's no secret why you got one of our top performing speaker awards last year. And you brought back a lot of great memories from when you talked to my group. And we'll take some questions certainly out of the chat here. One question is, it seems like the magic of this seems to be twofold. One is getting people to understand that being safe doesn't always mean being comfortable. And that happens a lot in Vistage groups where the chair is working with members that may not want to address a particular issue, but they need to. And the art of all that, the chair and the group, is making it safe when it's not comfortable. And so is there anything about that you'd like to expand on?
Yes, absolutely. And so I encourage our folks watching, look at Dr. Clark's book, The Four Stages of Psychological Safety. If you haven't read it, please take a peek at it, because he ultimately did years of research for very successful organizations and found that they all do the exact four same things. They create a powerful, psychologically safe environment and culture, and a culture of rewarded vulnerability. So, Alan, why is a fighter pilot talking about being vulnerable? Because vulnerability, in fact, is a superpower. It's not weakness. It's not the fact that if I make a mistake, I think that you're going to either punish me or potentially fire me, not promote me. It's the exact opposite. And in a powerful, psychologically safe environment, team members, they almost argue for the opportunity to accept that responsibility or that blame. It's quite amazing. The more that you do it, the more comfortable and confident that we become. And so the way, Alan, that you effectively do it is that you start, if we're not doing it, and then you do it over and over and over again. And what each of us that are participants, team members, experience during a high performance debrief is that the whole team is there to learn. That we're learning in a constructive, uplifting, positive way. And it's balanced whether I completely made a mistake or we were the most awesome team ever on the face of the planet today. It's the exact same. And so if you, Alan, did great today, I'm going to recognize you and I'm going to talk about the specific things that you did great so that we can tell the entire team, not just our small group, but everybody. We want to tell everybody the great work that you did. Well, what if we completely and miserably failed? What's amazing is that we want to identify that equally because we want our team members to not make the same mistakes we made today, tomorrow. And here's the beauty of it, Alan, and here's the key word. It is an expectation. We go into a debrief with the expectation of positive, forward-focused learning. That's the expectation. And I'll give you a quick example. And this is my experience, 23 years in the American fighter pilot business, with a great deal of that at the Air Force Weapons School, our PhD training course. In every debrief that I did over 23 years, there was only one time where somebody initially decided to skirt the blame, shift blame to somebody else. Only one time. It was a very large mission. It actually happened to be at the school. A long day. We had over 100 airplanes, and we got down to the point where we recognized that, hey, this one small team over here, they didn't achieve the objective. They messed up. And everybody knows it. And so I go to that individual and I go, what at this point were you seeing and what were you thinking and what were you hearing? And the comment was, it's not my fault, it's his fault. And Alan, the entire air was sucked out of the room. Everybody knew it, that this doesn't align. And as soon as that person said that, they go, oh, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. It was, in fact, my responsibility, and I failed to do that or tell my teammate. And then everybody goes, yes. That's the power of the debrief.
Wow. A note that I made to myself here was that it seems like at the end of the day, the real magic here is that if this is done effectively, the employee or the person being debriefed really feels understood. It seems like it really catalyzes a certain amount of empathy there if the CEO or the supervisor is doing it right, and the employees has gotten to the point where they feel safe, but if not comfortable. At the end of that seems like it could be almost cathartic.
It is, absolutely. And the reason that happens is because within that debrief structure, we're evaluating, did we achieve our objective, yes or no? And then we're gathering facts. We're just simply gathering facts. We call it our F4 debrief process. And the first F is to gather facts. And what's beautiful is that when we're collected together as a team, then we want to hear facts from every single person that participated on this job. Well, guess what? When every person is speaking up, then we as individuals believe we're empowered to speak and be part of this team. We're contributing. As Dr. Clark talks about it, it's actually his third stage, is that we're a contributor. And so when we collectively as team members, when we get to speak up, when we're heard, then we believe that we're a positive reinforcing force on this team. We're a positive team member. Especially Alan, when I go, okay, well, Alan, this happened. This is what I saw. This is what I was thinking. This is what I did. And you go, well, Shark, that, thank you for that point. That makes complete sense. And then we even write it on the board. Or we then go to everybody else and go, does anybody else have any experiences similar to what Shark just had ever before? Yes, of course. We've all had multiple of those type experiences. I'm not the first person to make a mistake. And then we openly discuss that together as a team. And what's amazing is that the confidence goes all the way up to the top. The belief that you are a team member and you're part of something more important, special, goes up. And you can measure that because people want to be engaged. And in fact, as you've heard Cujo talk about, as our team lead multiple times, we actually want to take the blame. We're going to argue. We're going to fight over each other to take the responsibility. And therein lies a powerful, psychologically safe culture.
In terms of getting the process started, I'm curious, you work with a lot of companies, a lot of Vistage companies in particular. Is it harder to help the CEO understand and embrace this, or the people that they're working for to understand and embrace this?
Great question. It's a combination of both. Because it happens both at the leadership level and then it happens at the subordinate or the follower or the team member level, right? And you can see that Gallup has looked at this and has said, we've got a bunch of leaders, CEOs that are not effectively leading people. We're not effectively leading people. Alan, the greatest lesson that I learned as a commander, as an instructor, and then a commander in the United States Air Force is that my team is made of people. Now, the CEO is responsible for the success of the company as a whole. But it is, in fact, all of the team members coming together that make the company the success. And so the CEO provides the vision, talks about what we're here to do in terms of the mission, does effective training so that I'm able to meet those expectations based on my level of training, and then empowers us and delegates the work for us to go out and do that job. Yeah. Leading from the front, empowering as a team member. And so as a team member, it's equally as important to be able to communicate that back up the chain to the boss, right? And therein lies some of the challenges that we have in society today, where folks may say, I'm not in a position to speak up, or I don't feel empowered to be able to go to the boss and go, hey, boss, we need to look at this. We need to maybe shift some course here. Okay. And so ultimately, the leader is the one that sets that tone.
A question that came in on the chat from Hope Borman was, what is your position? I mean, I'll put it to you this way. It's an additional challenge for management has been this remote versus in-office work.
Yes.
And how does that complicate building this culture of accountability, especially using your process of debrief?
Yes, absolutely. A wonderful question, one that I get everywhere I go, and our team hears that all the time. So Hope, thank you for that question. What's awesome is when we're separated, we're not physically here together, then we lose some of that social interaction, right? One of the 5 tenets that Freud talks about, which is we're a human being, well-rounded physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and socially. And as an effective team member, I get to see you, I get to interact with you. We're holding a coffee cup together. I get to talk about what's going on in your life and see your facial expression. That's been a challenge over the last several years, obviously. But what can we do when we have folks that are working remote? And here's the answer. We schedule the time. We sync it up. We sync up our meeting times so that our remote people are in our debrief exactly the same as our folks that are in person. to the point that we won't have a debrief given the opportunity if it's just for the people that are on site or in the building. It's a collective team effort. And especially when we start that way, or if we're not doing it, we implement that technique, it immediately tells the person that's working remote for whatever reason that they're valued and that they're important. And I need you, your input, who you are, what you bring to this team. Remember, you're the quarterback, you're the wide receiver, or you're the linebacker. I need your skills collectively with us as a team in order to successfully perform. So I do a debrief if I have folks remote with them in the debrief. It's not a private accountability session with just folks in the office.
Another great question here is, in every organization, you will have people that are maybe better performers than others and maybe more proactive in terms of performing. And the question is, how can I prevent certain team members from taking on too much accountability for others' responsibilities?
Great question. And it becomes obvious to all of us. It becomes obvious because we are all pulling the sled equally with equal strength. Now, some may have additional responsibilities different than others, but collectively, each of us are in a specific spot on this team in order to perform to the best of our ability, right? Based on our skills, talents, experience. And so that's why we're in that position. And so if someone is ultimately trying to take additional responsibility for someone over here that's either falling short or just doesn't speak up, everybody on the team recognizes that, no, look, I need you to be a contributor, because collectively that's what we are as a team. It's the expectation of all of us. And so the way, Alan, as a boss, to be able to lead through that is that we always have, one person, multiple people that go, Alan, that's my fault. I'm sorry. I'll take care of it. You don't worry about it. You're the CEO. You got a bunch of phone calls you got to make. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to work to make sure that this is, and I'll do some on-the-job training. They take additional responsibility, right? No. You go, well, I appreciate that, but let's come together as a team. And I want to get Amy over here to speak up more. And so I engage her in front of the team, collectively with the team. And so I appreciate from Alan, from Shark, you want to take more responsibility. I appreciate that. But I'm going to ensure that Amy over here is also contributing, and therein lies a balance, because it's just a human endeavor. We all see it.
Yeah. Well, it happens a lot with CEOs where in the moment there's a problem and they want to go ahead and solve it because they know how to, instead of treating it as a really great learning opportunity for their subordinate. And they think, well, I'll train them later, and then later never comes.
It never comes.
Here's a great question. They've all been great, but this one really kind of resonated with me. We have a saying in Vistage, we invite CEOs to the organization, human beings show up.
That's right.
And this one is, how do you coach the CEO who never makes mistakes, is never wrong, and looks to place blame to buy in?
Yeah, to coach that person, we sit down and we say, tell me why you're here and why it's important. I want to understand that. I want to understand what your personal purpose is. And then I ask the question, how about every single one of your team members out there that are working for you? What about them? Do you know why they're here and why it's important to them personally? And then you have them working for you on your team. Yes. What do you think their purpose is on this team?
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of blank stares from people like that, right, Alan? They're just staring at you. Because the reason that they're behaving in that way is because they don't think like that. And then somebody goes, this particular leader, this technique will be, I've never thought about it that way. Well, let's in fact think about it from a personal perspective, because those are the human beings that you're working with. And I'll answer it this way, Alan. I'm in Kansas City recently, and I have a young lady in the second hour of our presentation, right? She stands up and she goes, hey, Shark, I appreciate all this, but you're in the military, right? People have to follow orders.
Yeah.
You're in the military. So none of this works for us in business. And I pause for just a second and you're like, well, no, wait a minute. On my team, I have human beings. I have human beings that come from all walks of life. with diverse backgrounds from all over the country with different purposes and different callings. And all of a sudden, they're here with me on my team. By the way, they rotate in and they rotate out on a monthly basis. So I'm constantly having turnover. I'm constantly working with new people, and I'm constantly giving farewells for folks that are leaving, moving to a new job, constantly every month.
Yeah.
And what we've learned is the very best way to be a high-performing team is to work together as individuals, putting them in the right place on this team in order for them to thrive and soar.
Okay. We're going to take one more question before we get to our CEO guest, but Robert, before I do, there's a lot of interest in your slides. And in addition to people being able to watch this later, how do they get your slides?
Absolutely. So I've got a QR code up on the screen. You can use that, and that allows you to connect with our team directly. And also, Miss Megan and Madeline have my information. And so through both the QR code and then our email, then we'll be able to get you not just this presentation, but we can connect you to our website and show you everything that we're doing. The opportunity to go all around the country and work with you is a blessing for us. It's our calling now on this side of active military service. So great question, Alan. Thank you for that.
Yeah. All right, Colonel, here's your last one. And it's, once Team Brief is established, how do you advise leaders to maintain and keep it alive? It's got to be part of the DNA of the organization. We got to burn it into our central nervous system. How does the leader make sure that gets done?
It happens every single time. It is part of the operational structure. So when I'm going to do a job, then I'm going to plan the job I'm doing, knowing that I'm going to debrief it at the end. That's just we call it the Top Gun teamwork life cycle. We are going to debrief after every single job that we do. So I plan for the job, and then I communicate it to my team. I communicate the expectations, what we're going to do and what we expect to achieve, i.e. our objectives. And then we go do our job. And the life cycle is not finished. My day is not finished until I've come back and debrief. Alan, if I'm working in construction and it's the middle of the summer here in South Texas, then I'm going to be doing a quick debrief on the tailgate of the pickup at the job site. I'll even write some facts on a napkin with all of my team members sitting there. Right? If I'm in a meeting room, I'm going to be using a whiteboard or an easel. But we are always going to be doing a debrief at the end of every single job. It's just part of our process. And therein lies the beauty of the DNA.
Okay. Well, Colonel, we could probably keep you for another hour with questions. I want to thank you for your time today. Also want to remind everybody that you have the opportunity to win a copy of his book, Building Resilience: How to Move Past Fear into Real Toughness as a Team. And I assure you it's a great read.